Hello, good morning, everybody. My name is Casey Haynes. I'm a program specialist with NBRC. Today, we're going to go over the pre-application submission in our new grants management system. Um, so today, if you were at any of the registration meetings last week, they were a little Wild West. Today, we're going to actually do a little bit more of a quick walkthrough of the step-by-step guidance that we have, as well as mainly just making sure that you're comfortable navigating through that grant management system. We do have our program managers on today. I'm going to fully empower them to either answer programmatic questions as they see fit, or redirect you to the program user manuals if there's a great answer for you there. Feel free as we go along, as you have questions, drop them in the chat as we're doing our walkthrough. We will have more of a Q&A session toward the end, just to go over any specific issues you might be bumping into. So, with all of that, just as with the show of hands, folks here, everyone here is able to sign in and was able to find the step-by-step guidance on our website. Cool. Awesome. Great. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to jump right in, and I'm going to also rely on any of my colleagues to pop in at any time if there's like some additional context that would be helpful. So thank you. All right, here we go. All right, cool. So step one's pretty straightforward. Go to the landing site, log in. You all should be pretty comfortable with that. Once we're in, I'm going to be working in a little bit of a test environment today, so there's some things that are going to look a little different probably. Try not to pay too much attention to those sorts of things. So, all right. So, uh, to start off, we're going to our opportunities section. This is where it's going to list all of the publicly available opportunities to apply for funding for. My list is empty. Again, things are going to look a little bit different, but you should see a couple of items there. You'll click into that item, and you can review the materials about it. I messed up. I qualified for it already, so I don't have one on my list to show you exactly what that looks like, but there will be a little eye icon down here that'll allow you to go in and review the opportunity. So you review that opportunity, you'll click qualify for that opportunity, and it's not about whether your organization is qualified. You can think about the qualify button that pops up as kind of a add to cart option almost. You're saying, I want to basically save this to look for later. It's going to show up in your list of qualified activities, qualified opportunities on the left-hand side here. So once you've qualified that, I've got 2 on my list. Open it up. Again, it's got those bits of information for you. Just read through. One thing to keep note of as you're going through really any of our grants management systems are these little sub tabs over here. There's going to be a lot of important information for you as you look through, so you can kind of read more about that opportunity information. And then once you're ready to jump right in, you click that Create Pre-Application. And we may have more specific guidance on the naming of it right now, but I'm just gonna do this for today. Save and continue. Great. So now once we've hit that create application, we've saved it, there now exists a pre-application record in the system. If for some reason, you navigate away from the page and you need to figure out where that record exists, even though you were just in opportunities, in order to find that again, you're going to have to go to applications, pre-applications on the left-hand side. As you can see, I've been playing around a lot. So this is the one that I just created here. So they'll show up. You may have to, there's a couple of different options here. You may have to switch it either to draft or all. All will show you all of the pre-applications that you've got records for. So you can view it. You can go straight into editing it. Great. So I'm in my pre-application here. I'm going to work my way through all of the different sections. Let's see, I'm just gonna put some info in here.
This is Sarah. This is a good time to just note that when you get to this stage in your pre-application, you should have the program manual open and be reviewing the instructions in the program manual that tell you what to put into each of these sections. So if you've got multiple screens or, have both of them open together at the same time.
Is such an important tip. Yes, you'll see as you look at these that they often reference program user manual. So yeah, that's where you want to go to have more guidance on how you should be answering those questions. So that's super helpful. Thank you. Okay. Say yes. Put some information in there. Again, I'm mostly focusing on navigating for this session as it relates to specific programmatic questions. We will have some Q&A time at the end, and you may get redirected to the user manual, or they might have some more specific answers for you here. Okay. So we can, so now that we've gotten down towards the bottom of this overview tab in our pre-application, we are going to so we have a context here. You can see I'm kind of the base one there. There are, when you click that associate button, there's going to be an option of a bunch of different people are going to show up on here. So if you've got a local development district, LDD contact that you're working with, ideally that's where you would look to find their name. We've been sending out invitations for those folks to join our system. They won't be able to directly log into the system and review your pre-application right now. If you move into the invitation, the full application phase, there's some functionality there. For the moment, if you have someone you're working with, you click that associate button. If their name is there, that's awesome. If not, don't worry about it too much right now. Let's see, I'm gonna acknowledge that. Dun, dun, dun. Click save. If you had other contacts that you wanted to create within your organization, let me actually just go back here. So you can click the new option, fill that information out. One thing I'm going to note here is that unless you are really specifically jointly applying for funding, there's a sort of an official co-applicant. You want to leave this blank. So I'd fill that information out. And then the last piece to get that invitation sent to that other person who was going to be working on your account, their name, their all their information is going to pop up as a line item under here. There's going to be a little paper airplane icon that's going to say send invitation. So that's the final step you want to make sure you do when you want to add someone else to your account to work on your pre-application. Great. So I've finished everything in my overview section. That's all looking great. That's probably the biggest bundle of information that you're submitting here. We are, again, going to work our way down and then over to the next tab. So we're in locations. If something looks like you should be able to fill it out, but you're not able to, just double check that you might need to hit that edit button. There we go. Ron, do you have a quick question here?
I do. I didn't know if you wanted us to hold questions or if it was pertinent to what you're talking about. Go ahead and bring it up.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, so it was when adding context. Adding context. I had added somebody from Sunrise Economic Development. I added him. It was before I seen your guidance in the email, so I think I may have put something in that organization block, or whatever. Well, I hit save, but it's not showing up anywhere. It's not showing up like in a line, and I don't think he received a invitation. When I tried to redo it, leaving that one block blank, it just said that that email address was already in there. So it was just a bit confusing. And I think from what you're saying here, though, is I've got to create this. I've got to create the actual grant first before inviting folks.
So for it is a little bit tricky just when you're working specifically with an LDD because we do have a separate account kind of function set up with them. Things can get a little bit funky. But as far as, say, you're the executive director for an organization, you want to get your grant manager in so that they can do, fill in some information here. That one is a little more straightforward in being able to kind of fill that out than that invitation.
Yeah.
And if anyone's having any issues on the LDD piece and there's things that are looking funky, just I would shoot us an email to admin@nbrc.gov. We're kind of putting all those pieces together and we should be able to get that squared away for you.
Casey, can I just add to that quickly?
Yeah.
Ron, when you were choosing your LDD, were they in the list of drop downs or did you enter their email address? Yeah, that's the problem. So
Okay.
their email is already in the system. We have sent them an invitation. They have not yet accepted the invitation. So that's why you got the error you did, because you put in an email that was already there. So like Casey said, if you don't see the LDD in the drop down list at this point, you just don't worry about it. There will be a chance in the future to associate them with your application.
Awesome. Thank you.
And Jen.
So there's just a little bit of confusion on this one because the Sunrise County Economic Council is an LDD, which is a whole separate category from, we also are a technical assistance provider. So we've got two different hats under NBRC. So the person Ron was trying to add is one of our technical assistance provider folks who can actually help him with his pre-application and application if it gets to that point, as opposed to performing just the LDD function. So my email address is in as LDD, and I am set up in that. I've accepted the invitation. So that's kind of a separate item, I guess. So there was an email Friday about looking into or some kind of a possibility for folks who are acting as technical assistance providers to be able to assist within the program, I believe.
Yeah, so we have within our LDD program, we've got sort of a specific set of functions that we've kind of outlined as the sort of standard level of support to those grantees. It's so awesome that Sunrise is providing support at this pre-application phase. We're super appreciative of that. Because that's a little bit outside of kind of our like standard model at the current time. We don't have that built into the functionality of the system. So you're going to find there's some little bit of kind of funky workaround things that we're experiencing in that realm. So I think what I would say is in terms of kind of troubleshooting what makes the most sense to provide that support. Maybe if you send us an email, we can suggest some ways. We can work with the real smart wizards in our technical team to be able to suggest some ways that are going to make sense for providing support for those folks.
Thank you.
So,
Ron, we can talk after.
great. Great. So I'm going to just mosey on over here. So we've got a locations tab. This one should be fairly straightforward. We're going to add our state that we're in. We're going to add, see, there we go. Okay, so yes, I'm going to add my state. I'm going to add my county. What that's going to do is it's going to create a match percentage. It's going to kind of auto populate a matching rate for your pre-application. Hit save. So it's kind of looked in there and it says, okay, for Windham County, Vermont, that match percent is 50. So unless anyone else on my team wants to jump in on that one, I think we'll move right on ahead to the budget. So again, these are these are not accurate numbers. These are based off of my sort of dummy thing that I'm applying for, but it'll have sort of an overview of both the award floor, award ceiling, and once you start filling out, you click the plus sign on this budget period section. Once you start filling these out, that will also be summarized up at the top. So you'll see these sort of high level budget category areas. You'll click on this pencil, start filling some things out. I'll just do one of those, for example. Once you've filled out those pieces, you could do multiple at a time and hit save. Great. So just some things to note about this little budget table. There's some built-in validations in here, such that if that matching rate, there was a sort of laid out under the locations tab there. If you submit an amount of match that is under what is allowable based on that rate, it's going to give you an error message. So if you get that message, you just need to know you need to tweak those numbers a little bit. The other piece of it is if the NBR share of costs and the other federal share of costs, so your total federal amount of funds for this is over the 80% allowable rate. That's kind of the federal funding cap for these projects. That will also trigger an error. So you will need to go in and look at those numbers. So quick note, during the pre-application phase, you won't be submitting a full detailed 424 CBW budget. We will ask for that during the full application phase. But as far as budget information, You won't need to upload any other documents. You'll build it out in this table and save it, and then work your way down. I have to go back to edit so that I can actually put in a budget narrative. Great. So this field for any of those items above 5,000, and provide some more information about that in here. Scroll down. So this waiver information section is really important. I'm going to call some extra attention to that. I believe, and Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, the program user manuals have more detailed information about whether these waivers are going to be applicable in a certain situation. So read through those carefully for the purposes of.
The important part to note about waivers is that you must submit them with your pre-application. If you need a waiver for some reason and you don't submit it, it could result in your application being ineligible. So this is really important to make sure you understand whether or not you need a waiver.
Just to see what that looks like, I'm going to say that I do. So if any of these are yes, that means that you will need to upload the relevant waiver. Pardon me, a visitor. Oh, really excited about grants. Okay. Right. So yes, I'm going to say for the purposes of this one, I am going to apply for an LDD waiver. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom here. We'll come back to that waiver piece in just a sec. So I'm going to click new. So funding sources and commitments. So this is, you know what, I'm actually going to maybe ask one of our program managers to speak to this a little bit more in terms of what you should be thinking about as you're filling out these sections here.
Sure, I can jump in. This is Adrienne Harrison, Program Manager for the Catalyst program. And so this is the section of the pre-application where we ask you to identify your sources of match or cost share for your project. And so under the funding source section, you'll want to provide, the name of the source. So if it's a grant from another organization, you could say, yeah, sure, USDA grant. And then you'll want to note the type of funding. And by that, we mean if it's a source of federal funds, state funds, or other funds. So it's really, the distinction is really between federal and other sources of fund because of our 80% federal funding ceiling that we have for our awards. So that's the distinction we're looking for there. The amount, as well as the date that you have either received that source of fund or the expected date that that source of funding would be available. And the status, again, is whether or not you've received that, so it's secured, or if it's still pending, maybe you put an application out somewhere for additional funds, so you could list that as pending. So we're looking for all the sources that you know of. Ideally, we look for projects that have a full, funding stack put together. But if there are sources that you do not have, or if there are pieces of funding that you do not yet have a source for, that's okay. You can go ahead and list that here and just say unknown in terms of the source, but just let us know that you realize there's a gap in funding that you're working on.
So thank you so much. Great. Okay, so fun fact, you don't need to fill out all of those fields exactly. So do your best on that section. Great. I'm gonna do save this. So going back to that waiver piece, if you've indicated yes to any of those, you should get this kind of nice pastel, I'm a little colorblind, orange probably, notification that you need to upload upload the corresponding waivers. So to do that, we've worked our way through that budget section. Now we're on the forms and files section. This supporting documents checklist is where you're going to look for any of the relevant waivers in this case. If moving to the full application, other support documents will be listed in this section as well. This is not built up exactly the way that you would see it, but you would see the LDD waiver listed here with a link to download that template to your computer. So you would download that template, fill out the information in there, and then come back and click this upload button. And that's what saves that completed waiver to our system. So you would do that for each waiver that is applicable. You can leave these forms, pre-application files, and notes blank. I believe that's the last step on the pre-application. Once you're ready, you can hit submit to grantor, and it will send it along to us. Just checking here. Sarah, is there anything big I'm missing that you can think of?
No, just I guess just a reminder that those pre-applications need to be submitted by Friday, March 22nd at 5 p.m. So just keep that in mind as you're working through things this week.
Absolutely. Awesome.
And we
Well,
will
cool.
we'll have another session later in the week. So if you get started and you get stuck on something, there's another opportunity to come and ask questions or review the process.
Awesome. Thank you. And feel free to send questions again to our email account after our call today. But for the moment, I think we can probably just pivot right over to general Q&As as you dig in. So Mary, I see that your hand is raised. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you. This is very helpful. I think my question may have been answered in the chat. I couldn't find my pre-application under pre-applications, but the chat said that the save button on the bottom is not working. So maybe if I use the one at the top, it'll show up. I'll try that.
Chances are you may need to adjust the setting for your pre-applications to show all. There are a variety of options, and Casey kind of showed those in the presentation. That's also a common problem, is that it'll be like on some preset where it says submitted, or and so you're not seeing the full list of pre-applications that are available. So check that setting so that it says all.
Great. And I heard you say if something's funky with the LDD associate, to email admin. I don't see our LDD there, so I'll email admin. Okay.
Yep. So on that pre-application view where you click associate to add the LDDs, we expect a lot more of our LDD contacts are going to be added in the next few days here and get have their accounts made active rather. But there will be the ability to associate contacts during the application phase as well. And that phase is when you will actually have the functionality to submit your application to an LDD for review, and you'll be able to do a little bit more of that back and forth kind of in the system.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Robert, I see your hand is raised. Oh, and I think you might be muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so in the pre-application process, there's really no inputs for the type of project, what's it all about, the needs and so forth. It's just for logging in to get access to putting in the application where that information is going to be placed.
So
There's like 4 to 6 questions, Robert, that have to be answered. They have 10,000 character limits. Casey kind of went through those really quickly, but once you're in the pre-application, you'll see those questions that need to be answered, and that's where you provide like the overview, statement of need, all the typical information that you would expect.
Oh, okay, thank you.
question. Yeah, I flew through a lot of that. So if there are pieces where you're like, I feel like something should be here, let me know. We can swing back to it. CJ.
Hi, my question is about LDDs and it's not based on the registration system. Thank you for explaining how to get to the form. So we're a healthcare center that does deal with a lot of federal funds and having to do the accounting for them. I'm trying to figure out whether to ask for a waiver or not. We had lots of COVID money that we had to manage through our accounting department. What would the LDD be helping us with beyond that?
Yes, and are you referring specifically to the Catalyst program?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Great. So let's see here. Adrian, do
I
you want
can
to hop
take that,
in?
Casey. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. So the role of an LDD is primarily around grant administration. Those are the services that the 2% of the MBRC award amount go towards. And I can put a link in our chat to our LDD portion of our website. It highlights, we have information that highlights, the services that they provide, but generally they support tasks related to reporting. So helping grantees file and complete quarterly reports and annual reports, as well as supporting reimbursement requests. So MBRC is a specific reimbursement process that LDDs are well trained on and can support those requests. And just general sort of grant administration assistance. There are some services that are not included with that 2% amount, and those are around the completion of NEPA. So NEPA is sometimes required of our projects, or well, it's required of all of our projects, but sometimes NEPA can be a little more complex. And those services would be provided for an additional contract amount if you would like to work with the LDD on those. You may work with anyone on NEPA contract services, but those are something that are not included with 2%. But again, I'll put the link to this website. There's also a sample contract available, so you can see what types of services are included there as well.
So could I press that just a tiny bit more?
Sure.
So during the COVID situation, we had several COVID federal grants that we needed to do these quarterly and annual reports on and closeouts. And so I'm just trying to figure out if we've already trained ourselves in how to do this ourselves, or what we might be getting into with this program that might be beyond what we have already done.
So I'm sure that the processes that you've developed and the experience that you have are quite similar in terms of federal grant management. I would say one thing that can be different with MBRC awards is that we are a reimbursement grant versus some of the other styles of awards that come from different federal agencies and the documentation that's required for our reimbursements, you know, can be a learning curve. So that could be one difference. And our reimbursement process is described in our grants administration and compliance manual. That might be a resource you want to check out just to make sure that you're comfortable with that reimbursement process that we have here.
Okay, yeah, and not to take too much time, but this is just one of the questions that I'm really struggling with. I mean, we have passed through grants through the State Office of Rural Health and Department of Homeland Security that are reimbursement based. So again, I'm just feeling like we may have already trained ourselves, but I don't want to mess up. And so I'm kind of inclined to apply for the waiver. If we change our mind later and decide that we should have had one, is that possible?
I actually don't know the answer to that question. I'm not sure. I
think-
haven't seen that happen. So
Yeah, I think you would need to make that decision by the time you submit your application,
Okay,
because this affects your budget and you'll need to have it budgeted. If you want to decide later on, it will just create more administrative burden for you at a later date. Like, better to make the decision at application and have it set up rather than having to resubmit your budget, resubmit some of the documentation. So that would be my recommendation.
but at this point, we have to apply for the pre-application. We have to go ahead and submit the waiver.
If you do not submit a waiver at the time of pre-application, you will have to have an LDD
Okay.
at application.
Okay, that's my understanding. Thank you so much for taking all that time.
Those are great questions. Thanks so much. Right. Do we have any other questions?
There's a question in the chat that I'm not sure the answer of. Are tribal governments exempt from the LDD requirement? They're not a state, but they're still a government. I don't know the answer to that. I would say other forms of government, like municipalities and counties, are not exempt from that. So I just don't know the answer.
Theodore, let us get back to you on that so we can give you the correct information.
Thank you. Seth.
Hi, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. The insights are helpful. My question is more around the location section where you kind of ascribe locations. If you're running a sort of a multi-territory program, right? So it makes sense on infrastructure, right? You probably have a site or two. What about if you're doing more of a program-based thing, business or economics or workforce development over multiple territories? What's the best way? Should we describe all the places we might deliver such services, or only where they're going to be headquartered and administered from?
So I can answer kind of the technical piece in that you can list multiple counties, for instance, and it would we have our distress criteria set out. Some of them are at different rates. It will automatically calculate that based on multiple counties being added. If there's any other kind of context that maybe Adrienne or Sarah want to add to that, please feel free.
Yeah, so we have two, so for the project location in our system, you're going to want to enter where the project takes place. So if you're, for instance, having a program at a facility in a particular place, that is the project location. It is awesome that people from other places might participate in that program, but you do not want to list that as part of the project location. You could, however, describe that in the community context and project beneficiaries section. And that would be important information to put there, but I would not recommend you selecting multiple counties or multiple places in the project location unless your project is specifically happening either you know, a program is taking place there or a construction is happening there, because that will affect your match rate. And that's not always, you know, in your best interest. So you want to make sure that it's the project location for the county selection, and for any sort of other information related to if you're serving a rural community or serving distressed communities, if you're, you know, reaching beyond the borders of your project location, that would be described in the narrative. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, thank you. That makes sense. I think in our case where we particularly have partners like, you know, a higher education partner that would be hosting workforce and economic development, but plus, you know, sessions delivered from our headquarters, plus sessions, say, delivered at like Fort Drum in Jefferson County, right? If we have known other satellite locations, it seems like it's appropriate to put them in the multiple project locations. But if it's
Yes,
more of a footprint of service, describe that in the narrative unless you're actually hosting or doing some activity at said spots. Okay, I think I got it. Thank
correct,
you.
yes.
Thank you. And Mary, I see your message in the chat on that sort of tech piece. I think we'll think about kind of the bigger picture piece of it, but you just shoot us an email, and I'm happy to hop on a little call and you can share your screen and we can like troubleshoot any of those pieces one-on-one. Awesome. Great. Any other questions? All right. Well, not seeing any questions pop in here, I will move us toward adjournment. You can feel free to join us for the next one on Wednesday, or shoot us emails with questions as they pop up. Thank you all for joining us this Monday morning and hope you have a fantastic rest of your week.
Thanks, Casey.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Thank
everybody.
you, Casey.
Thank you.